Hi, welcome to day two. And today we're going to talk about note names and intervals. It's going to be the first day that we start to hone in on some specifics. But do not worry, this is going to be just as painless as it was yesterday. I promise you. Our three goals for today are for you to learn the notes within the treble and the bass clefs. Don't worry, I'll explain what those are in just a minute. Understand the use of ledger lines. Those are the lines that you might sometimes see above or below a staff. And then also understanding the importance of intervals, and then to give you a little bit of guidance in terms of practice that you can do as well too. So let's start right off with the note names. The good news is that there's really only 7 letters that you need to remember. It's the first 7 letters of the alphabet: A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Now, something that you might be able to practice, not even in front of anything, but just on your own in some quiet time, if you want to increase your literacy, would be to say those 7 letters backwards, because we almost always say the alphabet forwards. And so trying to say the letters backwards can sometimes stumble you up a little bit, but if you just simply practice A, B, C, D, E, F, G, G, F, E, D, C, B, A. If you can have that flow going back and forth, it's going to be much easier when thinking about when notes go down, you have to go backwards in the alphabet. So the first note that we're going to start with is we're going to start with A. Not a bad place to start. And so A is right in that second space of the treble clef. Now, I promised you that I would explain what these clefs were, and the treble clef is what's being pointed to on the left side of the screen there. And it has an interesting history to it in terms of how it's evolved over years, just the look of it. But it's important to remember that where this little, and hold on, let me get a red pen, where this little turn happens is right over top of the note G. It's sometimes called a G clef. And so that little curve making its way right around that G lets you know where G is. And so if G is the line right here, well, I'll just go ahead and I'll give up the game. There it is right there. Then A is the note right above it because there is no H. And once we sort of figure out that, the rest of the notes, I mean, you know the alphabet. And so it just works its way up that the next line after A is B. The next space after that is C. The next line after that is D. And do you get the pattern that I'm going into? It's a space, a line, a space, a line, a space, a line. That's all that music really is. And as long as you become better at recognizing where the note is, you're going to have no trouble learning to read these notes. Now, there are, if for some reason you don't like the idea of remembering that G clef, there are very easy ways to remember the names of these notes. I'm going to get rid of a few of them right now because I want to show you the first easiest way. Every music teacher knows this, is that the space notes spell out the word face. They rhyme. Space face. It's an absolutely easy way to remember, and it covers all of the notes because as long as you can show off your alphabet knowledge, you will know that after F comes G, and then we have our A, B, C, D, E, F. I didn't do a good job on covering that D. There it is. And then, of course, the one that we haven't talked about, E, down there. Now, let's move on to the bass clef, because I want to keep this video shorter today than yesterday's. Bass clef follows the same exact principle, okay? A line followed by a space, followed by a line, followed by a space. And I'm going to start with A down here. So notice how A is in kind of a different place, and so that's important to know. We're not using a G clef anymore. We're using what's known as an F clef. So if you take a look at where these two little dots are, they hover around that second line there, second line from the top. And that is, if I switch to my eraser, let's go to the second line from the top, that is where F is. And so even if the only thing that you can remember is two dots F, that will at least give you a reference point, just as remembering the G up at the top on the treble clef, that'll give you something to do. But if you could just remember that this bottom space is A, unfortunately we don't have the low F down there, but we still have A, C, E. Let me get rid of this. Hold on. Let me get rid of that F. And we've got G. Another thing that you can do is you can create a mnemonic device to remember the notes that are in the spaces. All cows eat grass is a very good one. You can feel free to come up with your own. I've had some very creative suggestions over the years. Some of them I can't share with you in a video. But the idea is that if you can just remember these spaces, or if you want to focus on the lines, that works too. Obviously, with your knowledge of the alphabet, you can just sort of fill in the rest as long as you remember space to line to space to line. Now, as I mentioned, there are some times where notes go above or below the staff. The piano has 88 keys on it, and thank goodness we don't have to remember 88 different note names. We really just kind of recycle the same 7 over and over again. But it gets pretty hard to notate some of the lower or higher notes. Now, we're not going to go too crazy today. We are really just going to look at the ones that go right above or right below the staff. Apologies for the graphics. This might have been made on one of those old Commodore 64 computers. I couldn't find one that I was happy with, and so I just picked one, and this was it. So you can see that we start to create these additional lines and spaces above the clef here and below the clef, where we put notes, and luckily it follows the same principle. Okay, as you can see right here, this first line note is A. Now the reason that it's A is because the note in the line right below it would have been F. G would have been this space right above that line, and so line, space, line, this line right above is A. And then the space right above that A is B, the line above that is C, and so on. And so you can notate if you want someone to sing really high, although that's pretty much the extent of the range I would ever ask anyone to sing, and you better be getting someone good for that high E. Or if you want them to sing lower on the staff as well, too, that's where you would notate those notes. Now, you may say to yourself, how can anyone read ledger lines consistently? It seems like it's too much information to take in. And I agree with you. As a tenor, sometimes our parts are written in bass clef, and the part sits so high that we have to read one ledger line note after another. And I don't know if it's because I don't do it all that often, but it does become confusing. And that is the whole reason for clefs. So I told that silly story for a reason. Tenors actually prefer, at least this one does, to sing in what's known as a tenor clef. It'll look like a treble clef. Sometimes it'll have a little 8 down at the bottom. Sometimes it won't. It doesn't really matter either way. And the treble clef, as long as we assume and we know that we're singing down the octave, the treble clef fits much better the range of a tenor or the range of a soprano. It doesn't fit at all the range of a bass, and so basses use a bass clef. And there are other instruments who use other clefs, and really the whole purpose behind clefs is to try to organize the notes as best we can so that we don't end up with ledger lines all that often. But sometimes it does happen. Now, let's talk about one more thing before we go today. Oh, before we do, if you want to get some practice really on anything that we talk about this week, but with note reading, take a look at this program, musictheory.net. It is a free website that you can use that I just absolutely adore. Do I adore it? Yeah, sure, I adore it. We're going to use the web version here. And it gives us a whole bunch of different notes that we can that we can quiz ourselves on. And what's really nice is that if you use this little setting button that's in the upper right corner, you can change what it quizzes you about. So if you just want to focus on the treble clef, if you just want to, you don't want any of those pesky ledger lines, you can do that down there. And so you can continue to build up. Let me go back out of here. There we go. It gives us a note that is on the treble clef. Which note is it? It's a B. Oh, gosh. And apparently when you get the right answer, it plays it for you. So please check that out if that's something that you feel like you might be interested in. Now, let's go back. One last thing that I want to talk about today is I want to talk about intervals, because I feel like they're almost as important as knowing the note names, especially when it comes to understanding what you're about to sing for a song in a hymnal, or play on a piano, or whatever it might be. The note names are nice, but it's like knowing the letters of the alphabet. However, if you can start to pick up on intervals, how two notes might relate to each other, then you can start to figure out how far up or down you need to sing in order to get to the next note. And it's almost as if you're piecing together notes to make a word, just as we piece together letters to make a word. And so if you take a look, let's look down here at this F major, okay? I like F because it's just that first space right there, and it's very easy to see. So the second is the smallest interval, and it's just a step. It's the next note up, right? From the first space to the next line, it's just F to G. And so to sing that, let me get an F real quick. It would just be bum bum. So it's just the next note up. We're not moving very far. A third doesn't have us moving all that much further, but it's a space to a space. So you can start to notice that if you go from one space directly to the next space, it is a third up. And so instead of bum bum, you have bum bum. It's a little bit of a higher leap. And then a fourth is a space to a line, but it doesn't look smushed like the second does. And it is bum bum. And then a fifth is a space to a space with a little bit of extra room, and so forth. Now, when it comes to a lot of the music that we sing, you will mostly find that these are going to be the intervals that you have to worry about identifying quickly. In most vocal music, and in a lot of instrumental music as well too, some of the greater intervals are really reserved for special moments, and especially for voice. We really don't like to have the voice jumping all over the place. Stepwise motion is really a big thing. And so if you can go to that same musictheory.net and practice some intervals as well too, it's there. I sound like I own stock in this website, but I don't, and it's free. So it's a good resource for you to use. You've got seconds, thirds, fourths, fifths. You can have them all start on the same note. You can have them start on different notes. So it's really good practice. And I think that this, along with knowing the names of the notes, are really a huge step forward in preparing yourself for what you're about to sing. And so let's do just a quick little review, some things that you can work on, saying the alphabet backwards and forwards, kind of, and you can do the same thing with the spaces of the treble clef. You can go F-A-C-E, E-C-A-F, and so forth. Remembering that the ledger lines really just follow the same philosophy of a space and a line and a space and a line. Just remember that. And then remembering the space that's between two notes and starting to learn what that looks like and then what that sounds like. And I think that'll help you a ton. Anyway, my goal of making this a short video is completely ruined, but I enjoyed spending the time with you today. I hope you really liked the video, and I'll see you again tomorrow when we're going to talk a little bit more about rhythms. Thanks so much, and have a great day.